No one came to the autistic boy's birthday, so the entire biker gang did. The balloons were red and blue, tied carefully to the wooden posts of the park pavilion, bobbing sadly in the autumn breeze. On the picnic table, a sheet cake with "Happy 12th Birthday, Maddie" written in bright green icing sat untouched, the candles unlit. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The party had officially started an hour ago. Maddie sat on the edge of the bench, his legs swinging rhythmically. He was wearing his favorite shirt, the one with a diagram of a V-twin engine on it. He wasn't looking at the empty parking lot. He was focused intently on lining up his collection of Hot Wheels cars on the table, spacing them out exactly 1 inch apart. To anyone else, he looked lonely. To Maddie, he was just organizing his world. But his mother, Sarah, watched him from the corner of the pavilion, clutching her phone so hard her knuckles were white, tears streaming silently down her face. She had invited the entire class. 25 invitations sent. She had even baked gluten-free cupcakes for the kids with allergies. She had spent her rent money on renting the pavilion, and not a single person had shown up. Across the park, near the swings, a group of mothers stood in a tight circle, sipping iced lattes and laughing. In the center of the circle was Brenda. Brenda was the head of the PTA, a woman who wore designer yoga pants and wielded her influence like a weapon. She glanced over at the empty pavilion and smirked. "I told you she wouldn't cancel it," Brenda said, loud enough for Sarah to hear, though she pretended to whisper. "I sent a message to the parent group chat last night. I said, do we really want our kids around Maddie during one of his episodes? It's a safety issue, really. I'm doing everyone a favor." The other mothers nodded in agreement, afraid to cross Brenda. They knew that if you crossed Brenda, your kid didn't get invited to the pool parties, and you were exiled. So, they let a 12-year-old autistic boy sit alone on his birthday. Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at her phone again. 20 minutes ago, in a moment of pure desperation, she had posted on a local community forum. It wasn't a beg for money. It was a plea for humanity. "My son is autistic. He loves motorcycles more than anything. It's his birthday and no one came. He's sitting here waiting for friends who aren't coming. If anyone has a bike in 5 minutes, please." 10 miles away, in the dim, smoky interior of the Rusty Piston, Viper's phone chirped. It was a specific alert he had set up, an algorithm that scanned local boards for distress signals, usually for police scanners or rival gang movements. But this time, the keyword that triggered the alert was help. Viper, the intelligence officer for the Iron Saints, adjusted his glasses and read the post. He looked at the photo Sarah had attached, a grainy picture of a boy lining up toy cars next to a massive, uncut cake. Viper felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He spun his laptop around to face Tank. Tank was cleaning his knuckles with a rag. He looked at the screen. He stared at the empty benches. He stared at the boy. Tank didn't say a word. He just stood up, the heavy oak floorboards groaning under his boots. He walked to the bar, grabbed the microphone for the PA system, and keyed it. "Kickstands up in 5, Tank's voice boomed through the clubhouse, cutting through the music. "We got a VIP event, full patches, shine 'em up, we're rolling heavy." The confusion in the room lasted for a second, but when Tank moved, the Iron Saints moved. 50 men abandoned their pool games and half-finished beers. This wasn't a drug run. This wasn't a turf war. This was something much more serious. This is the moment where the world separates the talkers from the doers. If you believe bikers are the good people, subscribe to this channel and show us your support, because we are about to ride for the forgotten. Back at the park, the shadows were getting longer. Sarah walked over to Maddie, her heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. "Maddie, baby," she whispered, touching his shoulder gently. "Maybe we should cut the cake, just us. We can take the rest home." Matty didn't look up. He was stimming, flapping his hand excitedly near his ear. "Wait," he said. "Do you hear it?" "Hear what, honey?" "Thunder," Matty said, a smile breaking across his face. "But rhythmic thunder." Sarah frowned and listened. Then she felt it, a vibration in the soles of her shoes. The birds in the trees stopped singing. The mothers across the park stopped gossiping. It started as a low drone, like a hive of angry hornets, and quickly deepened into a chest-rattling roar. The entrance to the park was a narrow two-lane road. Suddenly, the horizon was filled with chrome. Tank led the formation on his massive black bagger, his ape-hanger handlebars gleaming in the sun. Behind him, the road was a sea of leather and steel. The Iron Saints didn't just ride in, they thundered in. They took up both lanes. Cars pulled over into ditches to let them pass. Brenda, over by the swings, dropped her iced latte. "Oh my God," she shrieked. "It's a gang. Sarah brought a gang to the park. Get the kids." But the gang didn't head for the playground. They turned in unison, 50 heavy machines sweeping into the parking lot adjacent to the pavilion. The noise was deafening, a symphony of internal combustion that Matty felt in his very bones. Most kids would have covered their ears. Matty stood up, his eyes wide, his mouth open in pure ecstasy. To him, this wasn't noise. It was music. Tank killed his engine first. The silence that followed was heavy. He kicked his stand down and dismounted, adjusting his leather vest. He walked straight toward the pavilion. He looked terrifying, 6'4", bearded, scarred. Sarah instinctively stepped in front of Matty, shielding him. Tank stopped 5 feet away. He took off his sunglasses and looked at Sarah. His eyes were kind. "Ma'am," Tank rumbled, nodding respectfully. Then he looked around Sarah's legs at the boy. "I heard there was a party. I hope we're not late. Traffic was a bear." Matty pushed past his mother. He walked right up to Tank, staring at the patch on his chest. 114 cubic inches, Matty said, pointing at Tank's bike. Milwaukee 8 engine, screamin' Eagle exhaust. Tank cracked a smile that could have melted a glacier. "You know your steel, little man. I'm Tank." "I'm Matty, I'm 12. 12, Tank nodded solemnly. "That's a big year. That's the year you start becoming a man." Tank turned to the 50 bikers standing behind him. "Boys, introduce yourselves." One by one, the Iron Saints walked up. They didn't just say hello. They shook Matty's hand. They admired his Hot Wheels setup. Tiny, a biker who weighed 300 pounds, spent 10 minutes debating with Matty about which Hot Wheels car was faster, the Camaro or the Mustang. Matty was glowing. He wasn't the weird kid anymore. He was the expert. But the peace was shattered by a shrill voice. "Excuse me, excuse me." Brenda was marching across the grass, holding her phone up like a shield. She had rallied 3 other terrified-looking dads behind her. "You need to leave. Right now." Tank turned slowly. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, there is a problem," Brenda snapped. "This is a public park meant for families, not criminals. You are scaring the normal children. I have the mayor on speed dial and I have already called the police. So unless you want to go back to jail, you better get on your little bikes and get out." Tank looked at Viper. Viper was already tapping on his tablet. "We ain't going anywhere," Tank said calmly. "We were invited, unlike you it seems." "I wasn't invited because I have standards," Brenda yelled, her mask of politeness slipping. "We don't associate with broken things. That boy is unstable. He screams. He flaps his hands. It's disturbing. And now he's attracting trash like you." The air in the park dropped 10 degrees. Several bikers stepped forward, their hands clenching. Tank held up a hand to stop them. He didn't need violence. He had something better. "Unstable," Tank repeated. You know, lady, we do a lot of charity runs. We see a lot of kids. And the only thing broken here seems to be your manners. Sirens wailed. 2 police cruisers screeched into the lot. Brenda smirked triumphantly. Finally, officer, over here. 2 officers stepped out. One of them was Sergeant Miller, a veteran cop who had been working the beat for 20 years. He knew the Iron Saints. He knew they walked the line, but he also knew they kept the drug pushers out of the neighborhood. "What's the issue here?" Miller asked, walking up, his hand resting near his belt. "These thugs are trespassing." Brenda pointed a manicured finger at Tank. "They are harassing me and my children. They are menacing us. I want them arrested." Miller looked at Tank. Then he looked at Maddie, who was wearing a leather vest that Tiny had just draped over his shoulders. He saw the cake. He saw the balloons. "Tank," Miller nodded. "Sergeant," Tank replied, "just celebrating a birthday. We got a permit for the pavilion right here." Tank pulled a crumpled piece of paper out of his pocket. It wasn't a permit, it was a receipt for bike parts, but he handed it over with total confidence. Miller pretended to inspect it. "Looks in order to me." "What?" Brenda screeched. "Are you blind? Look at them, and look at that mother." She pointed at Sarah. "She's unfit. She exposes her special needs child to gang members. I'm going to call Child Protective Services. I have proof she's negligent." Speaking of proof, Viper stepped forward. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a portable speaker he had synced to his phone. "Sergeant, before you take any statements, you might want to hear this." "What is that?" Brenda froze. "This," Viper said, his voice projecting clearly, "is a voice note you sent to the Happy Valley Moms group chat yesterday at 4:30 p.m. Public domain once it hits the server, Brenda." Viper hit play. Brenda's voice, clear and unmistakably cruel, echoed through the park. "Listen, ladies, do not, I repeat, do not, go to the weird kids' party tomorrow. If we all boycott it, maybe Sarah will finally get the hint and pull him out of the school. He's dragging down the class average, and frankly, he's a freak. If anyone goes, you're out of the carpool circle. Pass it on." Silent, absolute crushing silence. The other parents at the playground had walked over to see the commotion. They heard every word. They looked at Brenda with horror. It was one thing to be catty. It was another to systematically bully a disabled child and his struggling mother. Brenda's face went pale. That's AI, that's fake." "I have the metadata right here," Viper said, showing the tablet to the sergeant. "And I also have the text thread where you admit to stealing funds from the PTA bake sale to buy those shoes you're wearing. Want me to play that one?" Sergeant Miller's eyes narrowed. "Embezzlement, that's a serious accusation." "It's a lie," Brenda shouted, backing away. Actually, one of the dads behind Brenda spoke up, stepping away from her. "My wife mentioned the bake sale money was short $500 last month. Brenda said it was an accounting error." The tide turned instantly. The community Brenda had ruled through fear suddenly saw her for what she was: small, mean, and criminal. "Ma'am," Sergeant Miller said, pulling out his handcuffs, "I think we need to have a conversation down at the station about the PTA funds, and let's add filing a false police report to the list." As Brenda was led away, protesting and crying, something amazing happened. The kids from the playground, the ones Brenda had forbidden to come, broke away from their parents. They ran toward the pavilion. Why? Because there were 50 motorcycles there. "Can I sit on it?" a little boy asked Tank. Tank looked at Maddie. "It's Maddie's party, you gotta ask the boss." The boy looked at Maddie. "Can I?" Maddie, who had spent his life being ignored, looked at the crowd of kids waiting for his permission. He smiled. "Yeah, just don't scratch the paint." For the next 2 hours, the park was a carnival. The bikers lifted kids onto the saddles. They revved the engines. They cut the cake with a massive Bowie knife, which Sarah found hilarious. Matty wasn't the autistic kid in the corner. He was the center of the universe. He was riding on the back of Tank's bike, doing slow loops around the parking lot, laughing so hard he hiccuped. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange, the party wound down. The other parents, feeling guilty and humbled, came up to Sarah one by one to apologize. They realized they had let a bully dictate their kindness. Tank signaled for the pack to mount up. The roar of 50 engines starting at once signaled the end of the best birthday Matty had ever had. Tank leaned down to Matty one last time. "You did good today, brother." "Will you come back?" Matty asked, clutching the leather vest they had given him. "Every year," Tank promised. "And if anyone gives you trouble at school, if anyone makes you feel small, you just point to this patch. We're always watching." Sarah hugged Tank, tears wetting the rough leather of his cut. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved him." "No, ma'am," Tank said, looking at Matty, who was now surrounded by 3 new friends from his class. "He saved us, reminded us why we ride." The Iron Saints rolled out, a long line of red tail lights fading into the dusk. They left behind a mother who had found her strength, a community that had found its conscience, and a boy who knew, for the first time in his life, that he wasn't alone. It's a reminder that true strength isn't about how much you can lift or how loud you can yell. It's about who you lift up when the world pushes them down. Please click the subscribe button and show us your support so we can keep sharing stories of justice, brotherhood, and the road.